Hey, everybody. Welcome back to this episode of the Dealership fiXit podcast. My name is Jacob, and we have a new guest today. His name is Lou Pedler with ZiiDMS. And Lou is not just a software guy. He's actually worked inside the dealership first, parts associate, parts and service manager, general manager, and now a product developer. So let's kind of start, Lou. Welcome to the show. Before you were kind of building the dealership software, you were working in some of the dealerships. Tell us a little bit about how you got started in this industry and just kind of your lineage through the different positions that you've had.
Sure. Yeah. Thanks for having me, Jacob. So I kind of just started as an enthusiast. I rode, spent a lot of time in dealerships buying parts, and just established a relationship with a few of the parts guys in one of the dealerships that I shopped with. And next thing you know, I was offered a job at the parts counter there, and that's kind of how it all started. I think it was late 90s. From there, just kind of grew my role. The dealership I was working at opened a second location, and I was offered the parts manager position at that location. From there, I ended up taking over the service department and kind of ran both parts and service for a while. Over time, just promoted to general manager within in the dealership. And on my resume, it shows as 3 different dealerships, but it was really one ownership group that just purchased and kind of changed dealership names over the years. So for the most part, it was all one location through all the years. But it was a ton of great experience. It was fun to work within my passion of moto, which grew from just moto into street as well. I had a ton of fun on the street side and doing track days and that type of stuff. So, but yeah, it's just been great.
Nice. And that was with Capital Yamaha, Folsom Lake Yamaha, Folsom Cycle Center, which is probably the second location that we were talking about, and MDK Motorsports, right?
Yep, correct. Yeah. Curtis Connor was the owner of Folsom Lake Yamaha and Folsom Cycle Center. And then he actually sold to MDK Motorsports when he decided that another DMS was needed in the motorcycle industry for dealerships to operate on. So he sold to MDK Motorsports and started ZiiDMS back in the day.
ZiiDMS. Yep.
Yeah. And I stayed on board with MDK Motorsports for a little while. Curtis kind of got the footing and everything going with ZiiDMS. I was consulting back to him at that point in time. And then when he had the capacity to bring me on full time, then I transitioned over to the software side from the dealership.
That's super cool, man. And shout out to Curtis there. It sounds like he gave you a little bit of your start into this new era that you're in the Powersports industry and with the software side and ZiiDMS. Lou, let me ask you this. With all the positions that you've had and the different stores that you worked in early in your career, how do you think that experience shaped how you think about dealership software now or how it should work?
I think it really, really shaped things in the manner of knowing what the dealer frustrations are with dealer management software systems and really just technology as a whole within the dealership, whether it's a supplier's platform, OEM portals, whatever it may be, just the kind of disjointed nature of everything. That's kind of been a key focus through the years, is just to try to consolidate a lot of that and bring it into one platform as much as possible.
Yeah. And the work that you're doing now, I see a lot of the great stuff and certainly trying to, kind of absorb a lot of those frustrations into a workable product for them. And I want to talk about those frustrations a little bit later on. But when you now left the dealership and you started working at ZiiDMS and then later on DX1, and now you're looking at the perspective of all of these dealerships or more many dealerships through the DX1 and ZiiDMS network, what actually surprised you about how dealers were using their DMS?
I think the biggest surprise that we've seen over the years is probably more of the lack of usage than anything. I would say probably 50-60% of the DMS is actually being used by the majority of dealers. You do obviously have some sophisticated dealers that are using the majority of the system. But yeah, I would say just kind of lack of usage and lack of feature adoption, really.
Let's double click on that. What do you think the 50% are using consistently, but the sophisticated dealers, they're using the rest of it? What are the major two differences between those dealers in the parts of the DMS that they're either using or not using?
Yeah, I mean, I think most dealers are using the basics, your invoicing modules kind of as a point of sale program. They're using their ordering and receiving and inventory management, those types of features. But it really gets down to, there's so many other features that are offered in the system that really give you the ability to drive into your dealership or dive deeper into your dealership with analytics and other tools, whether it's min-mac, ordering levels, seasonal ordering, those types of things. A lot of dealers just aren't utilizing those types of features.
Yeah. Yeah, I would agree. There's a lot of pieces to a DMS that make up the total thing that maybe they're just not aware that are out there. So let's kind of talk about that a little bit further. I mean, you've been at this now for 15 years, or maybe a little bit longer, doing the dealership software side of it. Is it just a misunderstanding that these dealers don't know about it, or is it, hey, I don't need these features, or is it just too advanced and they just don't understand it?
I'm sure it's a little bit of all. You and I both know most dealers are understaffed at this point, so it's really just probably more along the lines of just not having the resources to really dig into those things and learn them and understand them and know how to apply it to their dealership. They're more, focused on helping the person in front of them and stocking shelves and making sure that, e-com sites and the website's updated with inventory and those types of things. So I think that plays a little bit into it. I think the other part is not a lot of dealers are really digging into release notes each time releases come out. We've hosted webinars in the past, and you tend to see the same dealers showing up for those types of things or clicking on the release notes. And then you have a subset of dealers that just don't. They're paying for this really great tool that can really make their dealership better. But I don't think a lot of them really are invested in learning it and getting better with it over time. And I think that kind of plays into it.
Yeah. Dealership managers, owners, I mean, they're running a complex business. And I think you hit the nail right on the head. It's a resources or a manpower type thing where they just focus on constantly putting out this fire or this employee or this customer. You got to go walk back to service and figure out something there, ordering. There's a lot of moving parts to a dealership, and the tech stack that a dealer subscribes to every single month, they pay multiple bills for, DMSs and websites and all the things that you just listed. But I always have been of the opinion that the DMS is kind of the nucleus, right? If you look at a dealer's tech stack, that DMS should be sitting right in the middle of it because it does kind of account for everything that is important to the dealership operations. Everything is kind of peripheral connected to it at that point. That's in my opinion. But for the layman here, I think that most dealers just talk about the DMS as like it's an accounting software, it's an inventory software, but it's far bigger than that, right? So Lou, if I had to ask you to explain it to me very simply, what is the DMS actually supposed to be or do inside the dealership day to day?
That's a great question. I think first and foremost, it is your selling tool. So it's your way to maximize profits to the consumer. It's your way to host the information that is then filtered to your websites or your e-com platform. So while most dealers view it as a cost center, not a profit center, it really is a way to build profit within your dealership and drive profit. And I think that's kind of the mindset change that we need to be able to get through to the dealers, is that it's not just the tool that you have to do business. It really can be a tool that drives your profitability and revenue through the dealership.
Yeah, for sure. That's a great answer. And, just for everybody listening out there, ZiiDMS is obviously the DMS company that you're developing these products for, but there's many of them out there. I would argue that DX1 is pretty big. Lightspeed is pretty big. We have a couple new DMSs on the scene like Black Pearl and a couple others, but they for the most part, operate very similarly, right? They touch sales, they touch service, parts, accounting, inventory. What would you say for the dealership customer, right, of yours that says, "Hey, man, I don't know what I don't know." Where would you suggest that they start looking at first to kind of help optimize those same profit centers that you were talking about earlier?
What do you mean, just from like a us versus the next guy versus the next guy type of
Not
thing?
not really in a competition, no, but like DMSs in general, right? So I'm sure that every DMS that's currently available to a power sport and motorcycle dealer now, they all have their layout, their dashboards, their clickable little sections of the software. I mean, you said that 50 to 60% of the tools go unused. I mean, what's the best way to kind of sit down and learn about all the little aspects of the DMS to help make it more profitable for a dealer and not so much look at it as a cost absorber?
Yeah, I mean, I think it really just comes down to time and commitment, and the dealer users want to, or ability, need to dig in and learn it from from a deeper perspective and understand what the system can do for you, whether it is Lightspeed or Black Pearl or DX1 or Z for that matter. And when you're sitting down to do demos and weighing your options on which one to buy, you really need to look at the feature set deeper, than invoicing and inventory, because like you said, we all do that, right? Excuse me. So it's a matter of, what is important to your dealership that a DMS offers. Is it the back end security, compliance? Is it additional functionality that this system has in it, whether it's, built in add-on products or integrated products? The dealer really just needs to kind of dig deep and ask themselves what's important to them. It'll help make their decision on which product they go with, or if they already have the product, then obviously digging into the help portal, asking for additional training. We're always willing to do additional training. I think pretty much all of us are, because the happier the customer is with us, the more likely they are to tell their friend that also owns a dealership. And, this is a word of mouth business. It's really,
Yep.
really small. So that all kind of plays into it.
Yeah. And even just switching from DMS to DMS, it's no small feat, right? This is, all of your customer information, all your data kind of housed in one thing. So it's a super important decision to make when you're switching. And I'm sure that happens pretty constantly. But just to go back on something that you said, you were talking about some of the analytics, inventory analytics, customer data. What types of things could you pull from a DMS to tell us a little bit more about those pieces of the business there to help, sell more units, make more money, sell more parts, write more service?
Yeah, I mean, there's endless opportunities there, whether it's units sold that haven't come into your service department. So you can run analytics there to see who's bought a unit within the last 30 to 60 days, whatever the metrics are that you want to measure it on, that has not come in for their first service. Obviously, reaching out, touch points there. There's great opportunity in units that are in for service, to review those as opportunity for trade towards a new unit sale. So, all that data is there in the system. It's all reportable. We're looking at AI tools to make that even simpler and more streamlined for the end user, possibly even hands off on some of it. But those are just a couple examples of data that's there that can help drive additional revenue that a lot of dealerships are leaving on the table.
I love that. That's a really great one, actually. Yeah, you're looking at your sold deals, say for the past 60 days, who's not come in for service yet. I'm sure that's an export list or something that you can give to your team to make follow-up calls. Let's set an appointment for these guys. Yeah, that's a really good one there. I like that. That back of the house service business is super important, to be getting it from those customers that buy on the front end. You make a customer for life through the service department.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Okay. Well, let's talk about inventory intelligence real quick, because it's a massive topic in power sports right now, not only through trying to always sell more from a dealership, but the amount of inventory that these dealers have. I mean, a lot of the new OEMs are just flooding dealerships. They have been for months now with new inventory. Maybe demand has waned a little bit. Everybody's trying to sell as much as they can, but they're typically sitting on a lot of inventory at the moment. Tell me a little bit about how the DMS plays a role in that DMS inventory management part of it.
From a unit perspective?
From a unit perspective, yep.
Yeah. I mean, within most of the DMSs, they're going to give you your inventory based on age. They're going to give you some semblance of what you're into that unit on flooring, and then you can make the decision as a dealer on which unit you need to move first. I think one of the biggest misconceptions is that oldest unit that always needs to be the first one that rolls, and that's not always the case, just because of how flooring programs work and what you may have what you may have into that unit from a marketing perspective or what may be. So we try to put as much information in the dealer's hands to make the decision the best that they can. From a multi-rooftop dealership perspective, it's not always the unit that you have at your location that needs to be rolled. It could be the unit across town that needs to go because that's the highest cost to your dealership. So really just giving the dealership the tools and the data to effectively make the best decision for their organization, right? It's not always about you as a salesperson. A lot of them look at it that way because it's their paycheck and what goes into their wallet at the end of the day. But pulling a unit from across town could be the best dealership decision that needs to be made. So just putting that information in front of them and letting them make the best decision for the dealership.
I love that. It's a very good point. Yeah. Let's talk about the ordering side of it, right? So we just talked about managing what we have and how we retail certain models over others based upon the data that's in the DMS. What about when it comes to ordering? Right? We're kind of in the spring season now. Most dealers have gotten most of their 26s. A little bit later in the year, 27s will be available. A dealer needs to look at their past sales history on what models or segments they've done well with for each brand. Tell me a little bit about how the DMS can help with that.
Yeah. Again, it's analytics, right? And I think one of the things that I always found in the dealership, looking at ordering history and sales history to kind of predict what we would sell the next year. Your manufacturer always looks at the previous year.
Mm-hmm.
And wants you to increase your order allotment based on last year, right? But we all know there's kind of ebbs and flows. Not all enthusiasts are buying a new model every single year. A lot of them are doing it every other year or every 2 years. So for me, it's always important to go back a few years, really understand where the economy was at the given time as well, right? I mean, that's had a huge impact on the industry in the last few years between COVID, recessions and those types of things. So that really does play a huge part in the dealer's ability to sell and move units. Again, just going back a little bit further, not always manufacturers probably aren't going to like me for saying this, but not always taking their word for it. Do your own research based on your analytical data to make the best informed decision for your dealership so that you don't end up with bloated flooring and heavy on inventory. You're scrambling to call dealerships to take units. I've been there before. I think we've all been there. And it's not a fun place to be in.
It's not, no. So many OEMs right now are tying it to programs or performance metrics for the year with co-op and holdback and all that stuff. So it is difficult. But yeah, that was always something that I always took a really close look at, is which segments sold quickest, what kind of margin I was looking at, seasonal demand even, right? We were coming into summer, and so watercraft is starting to show up. That's a huge seasonal summertime thing that you try to sell out of before September, October in most places, right? So are you ordering the right amount? Not too many, not enough. But, that's kind of one of those things that you go, how can I push back on the OEM and say, you know what, these, ATVs are not really a great segment for me. I'll order less of those or the minimal amount, but I need more of these because I sell through them every single year. Right? You have that data available to you. You just got to know how to pull that reporting and look at it, I guess, objectively, right?
Correct. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Let's talk about parts now, right? Parts is always a fun department, and you've got a lot of experience in there. Thousands, dare I say, millions of SKUs on the shelf. It kind of has a shorter lifespan to a lot of dealers. Let's talk about how dealers can kind of get some insights from their DMS and maybe what people overlook from that parts inventory sitting in the back of the shop there.
Yeah. I mean, for me, first and foremost, is knowing your inventory is accurate. To me, that's always been the number one most important thing within a dealership. And I think to most dealers, it's probably, well, it may be important, but actually doing a physical inventory is the least important thing on their mind to do. It's painful, it's agonizing, nobody likes to do it, but it's probably one of the most important things that you can do within your parts department, especially when it comes to e-com or, a lot of our vendors and suppliers have reorder programs where there's inventory feeds going back to them and they're stocking your dealership based on your inventories and your sales. So if those inventory counts aren't accurate, that definitely skews things, and your inventory can be way too high in certain areas or even too low in other areas. And a lost sale is tough to make up for. So inventory counts is number one thing in my book.
Okay. And from those inventory counts, how much parts inventory would typically be it would be dead stock for the average dealership? Some of these dealerships that we walk into, they've got stuff that's sitting in the back of the warehouse. It's got dust on it from 3 years ago. I mean, what should a dealer do process wise to get that off their books or sell out of it on some type of special?
Yeah. For me, it's always been eBay has always been a great source to get your old obsolete inventory out of the dealership. Even if you're getting pennies on the dollar, it's revenue that you're getting back into the dealership that you can then spend on more current products that you can actually make some money on. So I think that's something that dealers struggle with, is losing money on something that they bought at $50 and they can't stomach selling it at 25 on eBay 5 years later. There's that emotional attachment to not losing any money, but you got to realize that clearing that old inventory is revenue that you can then turn into current inventory.
Yeah. Now let's talk about ZiiDMS's system just for a moment here, without getting too pitchy on the product, but you guys actually have a service to help with some of these bin counts, right? These ordering and stocking, to make it easier, right? You have almost like a RF gun that can scan. You don't have to pick up each physical part, check it off on some spreadsheet, that's 1,000 pages long, right? Tell me a little bit about that technology.
Yeah, it's radio frequency identification. So it is a special handheld scanner that's got a radio frequency that communicates with the label that's been put on the product. The labeling process within the dealership does not change. It's the same as whether you're using a regular barcode label or you're using the RFID label. Comes out of the printer the same, has all the same information, is applied the same. The biggest thing that is different is the fact that you do not have to touch and feel every single product on the peg hook or the shelf. You literally just walk around with your scanner, you pull the trigger, and that radio frequency pulls the serial number from each label into the gun. Then you press a button and it's in the DMS. So, it takes that inventory process for counting $250,000 worth of inventory from, 2 days of every person within the dealership hands on deck to minutes. You can do your full inventory in probably 15 minutes, however long it takes you to walk around the dealership, really.
Yeah. Yeah. That certainly speeds up the efficiency. I just quick little story. I remember doing these inventory counts, and we used to have to shut down the store on like a Sunday or a Monday to where we lock the doors and it's full staff and everybody's got a section of the parts warehouse. They all get their own clipboard. And this is back in the day before, fancy RF scanners, right? And
Yep.
Yeah, it would be all day. They order pizza in for lunch, sometimes we order it again for dinner, and we're going at it for 48 hours straight. It's kind of a crazy process to ask your people to be doing this, but it needs to get done.
Yeah.
And so that's cool. Does the RF also work on major units, kind of going back to that?
It can. Yes, it can, in short. We don't currently do it. We've definitely had a request for it. The biggest thing really is just the tag that you use for a unit.
Yeah.
Yeah, the parts labels are a little bit expensive, right? So it does add a cost to the dealership, but the unit label or the units require a tag. It's almost like a zip tie type tag, but it'll definitely come in the future and is definitely a possibility.
Yeah. Yeah. We used to do this monthly, and we would have the guy with Wells Fargo there checking our units from the flooring list that he has, and it's like doot doot doot. Yeah. So that can certainly speed up that as well, and not have to handhold, some guy that's there from the bank, making sure
Yeah.
you got it all sitting at the showroom there.
Yep,
Okay.
definitely.
Last question about the parts here, just real quick. In your tools, in your reports, what should an effective parts manager be looking at weekly, monthly, to make sure that they're on top of all their parts and accessories?
Great question. I think special order parts that have been received and not picked up is definitely a big one. That's not revenue that the dealership can call theirs until that part has been picked up by the consumer.
Mm.
So that's definitely a big one. Your obsolescence, got to stay on top of that. We kind of touched on that earlier. You set your obsolescence terms, whatever they may be for your dealership on the given product, and as soon as you hit that threshold, you've got to start discounting it to clear it from the dealership, get it listed on eBay, get that revenue recognized within the dealership. Definitely a big one. I think you're going back to the inventory, your negative quantities on hand. That's something that's got to be checked routinely, probably weekly. Just assign it to a parts person, have them check it every Tuesday morning when they get in. We all know, it's a competitive industry, so you're buying product from multiple suppliers, and it's pretty common within a dealership that, part number from turn 14 get sold when it was the Western Powersports part that actually left the dealerships.
Yeah.
Negative inventories happen, and it's usually an offset, adjusting one up and adjusting one down to clear that negative, so it's not a loss. But those are definitely some reports that the dealer should be looking at regularly from a parts perspective.
Double clicking on the OBS terms, what would be a good OBS turn rate or term that you deem it OBS for
I
most
think
parts?
I think it really depends on the product. Apparel has obviously got a little bit more of a shorter shelf life just because every season something new's coming out. So those are probably going to have, 60 to 90 days before you're wanting to start to discount those and clear them out. Obviously, accessories, you've got to kind of relate those to the model year. So you've, 365 days is probably the shelf limit for those types of parts. So I would always start to look at things probably around that 250-day mark to start to slightly discount things. As soon as the new model years are announced, people start to get excited about those and or maybe less likely to buy accessories for their current model, knowing that they're going to upgrade soon.
Yeah, that's great. That's great. Okay. All right. Let's shift gears a little bit. Let's talk
Yeah,
about the service department.
sure.
So you actually came up with a great report early in this interview about finding vehicles that have sold that have not been through your service. So obviously that's an opportunistic way to look at gaining more customers through the back of the house that have sold through the front of the house. But just in general, service departments, I mean, most dealerships that I see, they generate massive amounts of repair orders and repair order data. What insights could dealers, service managers, general managers, what could they extract from those that maybe they typically miss?
I think there's many data points that you can look out there. Obviously, your days to close on an RO is probably your number one metrics that you're going to look at. Once you've kind of identified some pain points there, you can start to look at the why. Was it parts that we should have in stock that we're having to special order? Is it, vacations that we didn't take into account when scheduling, whatever it may be? Obviously, looking at the technician efficiencies, determining who does what job the best so that you you kind of know you can use the analytics to understand your technicians and their efficiencies in each job. I think standard jobs are a big thing that all dealerships really need to make sure that they have. And it's mostly the routine maintenance type jobs that really need to be in there. Those always an interesting thing in our dealership. We ran huge numbers of standard jobs because I never wanted a customer to call and get a different price two different times, right? If they
Yeah.
make phone calls to you and you give them a different price each time, they're really going to lose faith in your service department. And I think that's still a big problem in a lot of dealerships, that they just don't have consistent pricing from one phone call to the next.
That's a good point. Yeah. I mean, we're talking about lube oil filter. We're talking about tire plus install, kind of standard stuff. Obviously, depending sometimes on the tire that they choose or the machine that they have to service, it may require a fancy oil filter for this OEM versus the next OEM. But what are some other examples of standard jobs that a dealership should be pre-programming into their repair order system?
Yeah, I mean, I think those are the main ones, right? Your standard services, all your service intervals, whether it's based on hours or based on miles, having those built into the system for each model line that you carry. And separating, the youth stuff from the big boy stuff is definitely a key. And then, if you've got other things that are routine problems that you see that aren't covered under warranty, to have those built in as standard jobs as well, so that again you're given that consistent pricing. And it's always good to call around to other dealerships in the area too, and just ask them to kind of see, pretend you're a consumer and you're calling. It's always good to know what the dealership across town, your competition is doing as well.
Okay. So mystery shopping the service advisors as well. Okay. You touched on labor efficiency, tech productivity. We've got some maybe service trends that are seasonal, watercraft season versus snowmobile season. But you talked about warranty real quick. Tell me the interchangeability there with how the DMS reports warranty claims or gets, those jobs approved through the DMS for the various OEMs.
Yeah, there are a couple of OEMs that have warranty integrations. I wish they all did, but unfortunately, there's only a couple of them that currently have that. It definitely streamlines the process, and I think it helps the dealership not need to pick up the phone or even fax things, right? I think that's still happening with some of the OEMs. So
yeah.
It's definitely not something that enough of the OEMs have adopted. I'll just say that. If any of them are looking to do API integrations, that one would be the top of my list. I mean, it's got to increase their internal efficiency as well, not just the dealership, but from an internal OEM perspective, I think it's definitely got to lighten the load on there.
For sure. Yeah. That's a heavy lift. And what about extended warranties, extended service contracts, stuff like that? Do you have integrations with some of those companies that provide that?
Yeah, most all of those are on the sales side. So, they have the ability to pull the sales deal in and create their menu selling opportunity there. But yeah, from a warranty submittal perspective in service, that's definitely, I think, kind of a sore spot in the industry right now.
Got it. All right, let's talk about the gold mine of customer data, right? So we're doing sales deals in the sales department, transactions in the parts department, repair orders in the service department. All of this is kind of the collective of all of your customer data, whether you worked a deal with them in one of the other departments, that's all there, right? So most dealers, as I understand it and have seen through experience, I mean, they have tens of thousands of customer records in their DMS, past and present. How often do you think dealers actually use some of that data strategically to their benefit for whatever kind of crazy campaign they want to come up with next?
I would say some are doing it, some are not.
Okay.
I think, point blank, I think that's just kind of where we're at with it. The days of mailers, I think, are pretty much over. Now it's all, CRM touch points, reaching out through text message or email marketing are definitely probably the most two effective ways to go about it. I think text message is a little bit more effective than email myself, even from an internal perspective. With us sending emails to our dealers, the open rates are usually pretty bleak. So text message, I think, is definitely a little bit more effective way to get to the dealer, right? Everybody's on their phone pretty much all day, every day nowadays. So text message at least gets their attention. They take a look at it. Maybe there's not anything to click on, but plants that seed.
Yep. And so you have some communication pieces within there that you can text or email directly from some type of report or dashboard that you're looking at in ZiiDMS?
Yeah, for us, we've leveraged, I think, all the CRM partners in the power sports industry and even some in the auto industry that our power sports dealers are using, where we have a two-way sync with our customer. So the customer is syncing into the CRM, any updates or added customers in the CRM are syncing back into the DMS, so they can leverage their CRM tools for the touch point marketing.
Okay. Well, let's talk about a little bit of that. So if a dealer is looking to create a campaign, they want to use their DMS as a intelligence platform. I mean, what could they do? Like a trade-in type of incentive for customers that you sold to 2-3 years ago, service reminders you brought up earlier, checking who hasn't been in service yet from a sold deal, writing season campaigns, gear sales to people who didn't buy. What are some other examples of how customers can kind of look at, or dealers can look at their customers and say, I think I have an angle here for this type of grouping or this type of grouping of reported customers?
Yeah, I mean, I think those are all great points. You can, let me think on this one a sec.
Maybe some events, maybe some, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think events are always a good way to get the consumer engaged in your dealership, whether it's local organizations that do ride days. I always loved to open up the dealership, fire up the barbecue or supply coffee in the morning and have those groups meet at the dealership. It's a great way just to kind of, improve the vibe around the dealership and customer interaction with sales staff and parts staff and everything, and just kind of make the dealership feel like home. You're always going to find new customers that had never come to your dealership because they had their shop across town or whatever it may be, but because you hosted the ride day for their organization, you can earn new customers that way. It's a great engagement opportunity.
Yeah, great point. Yeah, it's a community industry that we're in, right? And it takes all of us to keep them enthusiastic about it. Okay.
Absolutely.
All right. So multi-roof dealerships, we touched on that earlier. Obviously, you guys do a great, focus on multi-location groups from store to store. What kind of problems start appearing when a dealer grows into multiple, rooftops, 1 to 5 locations, and they're trying to kind of sync processes between the stores?
I mean, I think it touches every department. Your accounting department is probably, the biggest impact. You end up having so many hands in the cookie jar, and you may start with one chart of accounts in each location, but the next thing you know, things grow legs in one or multiple locations, and then it's tougher to keep things in sync. We've done some really cool things around that, but again, it touches every department. Your sales department is probably not leveraging each location's inventory enough. It's not uncommon for 2 stores to fight over the same customer and not even know it, right? To be pricing against one another. So being able to have that knowledge of having the same customer in 2 of your locations shopping the same bike is a key factor. And then, from a parts perspective, again, I think it really comes down to inventory sharing. If you've got the stock at one of your locations, it's probably going to be more beneficial for your consumer, not just the organization, but for the consumer to get that product from one of your other locations versus reordering it from the OEM or from the supplier. And then from a service perspective, I think for the most part, the service centers are going to be standalone. A ton of interaction there. We do see some dealerships that'll want to transfer a unit from one location to the other because they've got a technician that specializes in whatever the job may be, more efficient from that perspective. But I think service is probably the least likely to benefit from multi-organization.
Are you able to see different customer records sitting at one store with this DMS? Are you able to see it at a different store's DMS within the group?
I can't speak to everybody's. With ours, we have one customer record through the organization. So regardless of where they've shopped, you can see their purchase history. So you do have full insight into that.
Okay, that's cool. That's cool. That was one thing that always kind of irked me is that, we would have, 5 or 6 different dealers in one major metro area, and, they would buy a unit over here, and then they would get parts for it at this one, and then they would do a service visit at their local one. And then none of these DMSs that we used back in the day, they didn't talk to one another. And so there was 3 customers through 3 siloed DMSs. And you couldn't really pull any history on any one of them unless you pulled it all out of it and put it into one report and looked for duplicates, right? But you're saying you have a kind of a cohesive way to look at a one customer record through any group store's DMS.
Yeah.
That's great.
Yeah, you if you've really got yourself a dealership group organization, I'll use Del Ammo as a prime example, right? They've got multiple locations in one region, essentially, and they're all branded the same. They all look the same. So for a consumer to not get that like Target or Best Buy experience through those locations is kind of a disservice to the consumer in my mind.
Totally. Yeah. Totally. You walk like Home Depot, you walk into any Home Depot and they got your purchase history through some type of central database, Yeah. Okay. The technology shift in the DMS, right? So obviously this is an ever evolving, ever growing product that just gets smarter and smarter. I think historically DMS systems kind of started out as like accounting and inventory, but now we've got APIs, we got analytics, you mentioned AI. Where's this service, this product that you build and that is out there, where's it going in the next 5 years?
I think we're going to see more change in the next probably 2 to 5 years than we've ever seen before. And to say where it's going to go, I don't even know that I can say where it's going to go. I'll just say that I think it's going to be more life-changing than the internet itself or the cell phone or, the smartphone. It's definitely going to evolve and advance a great deal in the near future.
Well, give us a little preview here, Lou. What are we looking at? How can we better utilize these DMSs in the future to do more work for us?
Yeah, I think for me, it really comes down to efficiency. I think, when people hear AI, one of those kind of the misnomers that goes along with it is, oh, it's going to take jobs away. I don't think that's necessarily the case, or it doesn't have to be the case. It's really about creating efficiencies for your staff, giving them more opportunity to focus on the consumer while still getting all that back end work that needs to be done. All those things we kind of talked about earlier that just aren't happening within the dealership, right? We talked about things that they're not utilizing in the DMS. Well, if they're not utilizing it in the DMS, it's probably just stuff that's not happening in the dealership that should be happening. So
yeah.
I think AI is really going to be life-changing in the productivity aspect of just automating things for the end user that can happen a lot more seamlessly.
I love that answer. Yeah, that's great. Let's do a couple rapid fire questions here just to kind of end our segment. And I appreciate the time today. Just give me a quick answer. I'm going to fire off some questions for you. Lou, one DMS feature every dealer should use but doesn't.
I'll go min-max.
Say it again.
Seasonal ordering.
Seasonal ordering. Got it. One report every GM should be looking at every Monday or Tuesday morning.
For us, it's kind of a major unit sales dashboard. I love every dealership or every department in the dealership, but sales is really what the dealership revolves around. So your MU sales dashboard.
Moving the metal. Couldn't agree more. Yep. All right. One operational metric that every dealership ignores.
Inventory.
Okay. Last one here. One thing Powersports dealers should learn from automotive.
I think the number one thing, well, you want dealers, that dealers could learn from automotive?
Dealers, correct, yes.
Probably customer touch point and marketing.
Customer touch point and marketing. Okay. They do a great job at it. Yes, they do.
Yeah, especially from a service perspective.
All right. And last question here for you, Lou. If the internet went down tomorrow and the only system in the dealership was the DMS, could dealerships run off of that just by itself?
Well, I think we're all internet based now, so that becomes a tough one. You can always run off of your cell phone hotspot. So,
Okay.
yep, they could do it.
They could do it. Okay, cool. All right, man. Well, I've taken up a lot of your time, a lot of insightful stuff here today. I do appreciate you coming on with me. The DMS obviously is a huge topic within every dealership, regardless of the one that you subscribe to. ZiiDMS is a killer one. I've seen the work that you guys have been doing, and I like all your guys. I like talking to them, and they're always ecstatic about all the new little things that, you know, they hear, hey, this is a problem, or I need this to do this, and you guys jump on it really great. And so any last words, Lou? How can people get a hold of you? Where should they go to find you?
Yeah, no, I appreciate the opportunity to join the podcast, Jacob. So thanks for reaching out. ZiiDMS.com is definitely the best way to get through to us. And we look forward to hearing from you.
All right. All right. Well, Lou, appreciate you again coming on. And on that note, we'll say bye, everybody.
Awesome. Thank you.
Still guessing what to pay on a used bike? Still holding aged units that just won't move? It's time for a real system. Moto Hunt's ultimate used inventory playbook shows how the best dealers are finding better inventory, pricing trades right, and turning used bikes faster with fewer mistakes and more margin. It's short, real, and free to download right now. Visit dealers.motohunt.com to grab your copy or check for the link in the notes.